Tonight, a police-involved shooting in Nunavik leaves a man dead and his twin brother in critical condition.
To see where Native people show up and have this impact, I think is just an opportunity for us to be visible in the states that we reside in.
Today is the day that Americans go to the polls. We'll hear from Indigenous voters south of the Medicine Line.
There's a lot of people that really want to learn their languages, the Indigenous languages.
And generative AI books on learning Indigenous languages are appearing on Amazon. What they're doing about it. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A police officer shot and killed a man in Salluit, Nunavik, an Inuit community in northern Quebec early Monday morning. His brother was also shot and is in critical condition after being medevaced to a hospital. It continues the trend of Indigenous peoples being killed at the hands of law enforcement in Canada. APTN's Savannah Craig has the story and a warning this may be disturbing to some viewers.
A video uploaded to social media appears to show a confrontation between police and Joshua and Garnet Pipagatuk, where two shots are heard. A Nunavik police officer allegedly shot the twins in the early hours of Monday morning around 4 a.m. in Salluit, Nunavik. Joshua was taken to hospital, where he was pronounced dead, while Garnet was medevaced to a hospital in critical condition. On Monday, Garnet woke up in hospital. Quebec watchdog, the Bureau des Enquêtes, has 5 investigators looking into the situation. In a statement, the BEI said, preliminary information provided to the BEI suggests after a call was made to 911 over a person attempting to drive while impaired, 2 officers arrived on scene, leading to a physical altercation between the officers and 2 people. The BEI says the police allegedly used electric shock weapons and pepper spray to subdue the people without success. The BEI says a police officer allegedly opened fire at one of the people who was injured by police, then continued to open fire on the second person who was also injured. This is the 10th Indigenous person to die in Canada during an interaction with police since the end of August. Nunavik has a history of police violence towards community members. Between July 2016 and September 2018, civilians were being killed by Nunavik's police service at the highest rate in Quebec. According to Quebec watchdogs, Bureau des Enquêtes, the Nunavik Police Service is at the heart of more than 4% of all incidents during death or serious injury it investigates. The Nunavik Police has had approximately 26 times more lethal and/or severe injury events compared to the Montreal Police since 2016. Protests have been held in Nunavik in response to the killing of Joshua Pipagatuk for the last 2 days.
I'm so angry right now.
Frustration and grief is being felt by many in and outside of the community. Many in the social group, Salluit Breaking News, are questioning the use of guns against community members and calling for accountability. APTN asked Nunavik Police what will happen to the officer involved in the shooting. It did not respond to our request by airtime. Peta Atami, the president for Makavik, the legal representation of Quebec's Inuit, said in a statement that this incident is a painful reminder that Nunavik needs significant reform to truly serve and protect the community. Atami added that non-lethal de-escalation methods must become standard practice. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
Meanwhile, the Assembly of First Nations Executive Committee has passed a resolution to support a public inquiry into the death of Jon Wells. Wells died on September 17th after an altercation with 3 Calgary police officers at a city hotel. He was 42 years old and a member of the Blood Tribe in southern Alberta. The Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, or ACERT, is investigating the incident. In a detailed September news release, ACERT said that Wells, who was unarmed, told officers he didn't want to die before he was punched, tasered, and injected with a sedative. In October, Blood Tribe Chief Roy Fox moved the resolution during the AFN's special assembly. It was officially passed on Friday. The resolution calls on the Mayor of Calgary and the Chair of the Calgary Police Commission and the province and the feds to support the public inquiry. A parliamentary committee continues to study gender-based violence and femicides against Indigenous women, girls, and gender-diverse people. On Monday, National Family and Survivors Circle Chair Hilda Anderson-Pierce appeared before the Committee on the Status of Women. She was asked how important it is that the federal government appoint an ombudsperson who will monitor progress on the murdered and missing women and girls' final reports calls to justice.
Because without an accountability mechanism, Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit and gender diverse people are going to continue to die at alarming rates, go missing at alarming rates, and experience violence at alarming rates.
The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is organizing a vigil for a woman who died behind the Portage Place Mall in downtown Winnipeg. On October 31st, around 3 p.m., 28-year-old Brianna Close was found with life-threatening injuries by Winnipeg police on the 100 block of the promenade behind Portage Place Mall. She later died of her injuries in hospital. She's being remembered as a loving mother of 4 children. 32-year-old Ryan John Kennedy has been charged with second-degree murder in connection with her death, and the two were known to each other. A candlelight vigil will be held this evening at 7 p.m. in Winnipeg at the Portage Place Promenade. Election Day is officially underway in the United States, and to mark the occasion, APTN's Sierra Bettens and Tina House bring you an Indigenous look at today's presidential election.
Millions of voters in the U.S. will cast their ballots in today's presidential election. Behind the scenes, Indigenous-led advocacy organizations have been working tirelessly to get Indigenous voters to the polls. Michelle Spark is the Director of Strategic Initiatives at Get Out the Native Vote in Alaska. She says that in northern communities, democracy begins at the post office.
When we have chronic postal issues and chronic staffing issues with the election workers, working in these small communities, you're going to have mistakes. You're going to have stuff that costs your vote being fully counted.
For Election Day, Spark and her team are helping fill those gaps.
So we're ready to dispatch up to 10 workers to different villages so that they will have a worker on Election Day.
On the West Coast, Executive Director Alyssa Macy and the Native Vote Washington team have been knocking on doors and mailing educational pamphlets. But Macy says Indigenous voters living in rural and tribal communities may face additional challenges.
So in some communities, they don't have a voting box. So driving to town, for some people, assuming you have a car, is a relatively easy thing to do. But what if you don't have a car? What if you're an elder with, limited means to get around?
APTN spoke to University of British Columbia political science professor Stuart Prest about what's at stake for Indigenous voters in the U.S.
We have a vastly different view of Indigenous rights and the place of Indigenous peoples in the United States, and by extension on both sides of the border between the two candidates. I think the stakes are high, and that's the sort of thing that can mobilize voters, Indigenous voters in this case, to actually show up, because it really does matter.
The election comes less than 2 weeks after outgoing President Joe Biden apologized for the U.S. Indian boarding school system. Macy says the apology must be followed by action.
What is the process to heal from that? Like, what are the resources invested to support that type of healing? Those are questions that I personally have.
2024 also marks the 100th anniversary of the U.S. Indian Citizenship Act. While the fight for Native American rights continues, Macy believes this election is an opportunity.
To see where Native people show up and have this impact, I think is just an opportunity for us to be visible in the states that we reside in. and to demonstrate that we have influence and we have power, and we are going to use that to elect people that care about the things that we need for our communities.
The polls will begin to close Tuesday evening, but with such a tight race, it could take days before a winner is declared. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Going to be an interesting night. Time for a quick break. Still to come, suspicious-looking books claiming to teach you the language.
You can do a search for these authors and find that they're not real people. But the big tell is that the ISBN, the International Book Number, is just made up.
Welcome back. Could be a big day for Nunavut politics tomorrow, as the Premier of Nunavut will face a leadership review on Wednesday after calls for his removal from a member of the Legislative Assembly. On Monday, Avilik MLA Solomon Maliki brought forward a motion to have Nunavut Premier PJ Akiakuk removed from his position over a lack of transparency within his government. Maliki told reporters non-cabinet MLAs have not been receiving answers to their many inquiries since the beginning of Assembly, despite Akiakuk promising more transparency during his election campaign. The Premier has denied the claims of a lack of transparency and said he has always made himself available to answer any questions. The last time a Nunavut Premier was removed was in 2018, with former Premier Paul Quassa. A rally was held outside the hotel where the Canada Pension Plan Board was set to meet in downtown Vancouver. Indigenous leaders are calling on the board to divest from fossil fuels, weapons, and companies violating Indigenous rights.
We stand with Wet'suwet'en! We stand with Wet'suwet'en! We stand with Wet'suwet'en!
Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chief Naumux was joined by supporters from the Free Palestine movement to call on the CPP to allow more Canadians to have a say in how the $647 billion fund is working for its more than 22 million Canadian contributors and beneficiaries.
In 2023, when the moment came for CPPIB to take action, they voted against a proposal from the Union of BC Indian Chiefs asking RBC to respect Indigenous rights. They chose their side. Every investment they make in tar sands and frack gas pipelines is political. Every investment in oil sands companies and coal mines is political. Every weapons manufacturer they invest in, whose products are used to carry out war crimes, is political.
An update this morning on the contract talks between Canada Post and the union. The Crown Corporation says negotiations held over the weekend were less than productive than it had hoped for. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers claims Canada Post wants flexibility to deliver parcels at the lowest possible cost. Neither side has issued a 72-hour notice of intent to start a lockout or strike, but the union says it won't shy away from taking the next step if there isn't real movement at the bargaining table. A series of suspicious-looking and inaccurate Indigenous language books have been appearing on Amazon Marketplace. These appearances are raising questions about whether the books are being written by generative AI. APTN's Sierra Bettens investigates.
Thomas Bear claims to be a distinguished Plains Cree language expert from Canada and the author of several books. His bio celebrates his work in the community, sharing his expertise through workshops and seminars. But there's suspicion that Bear isn't who he claims to be, or if he even exists. A series of near-identical books on Amazon are generating outrage on social media. From Plains Cree to Ojibwe to Blackfoot, most look the same, only the author names are different. The author profiles go nowhere. The International Standard Book Numbers, or ISBNs, aren't real. One Facebook user said the Ojibwe book she bought was inaccurate, and some suspect the books were created using generative AI. To put Bear's Plains Cree book to the test, APTN reached out to language instructor Dr. Kevin Lewis from the Minisequin Lake Cree Nation. Within seconds, he knew something was off. Most words were either inaccurately translated or completely made up.
I don't recognize that. Amuya would be like saying no. Nigan is forward or in the front. Oh yeah, it's off. I know it's off.
Professor David Gerhard heads the University of Manitoba's Computer Science Department. He says AI-generated books are common, and while they may look legit, they're often unreliable.
These generative tools, especially when they are working in domains where they don't have a lot of information, can sometimes just make up an answer rather than say they don't know. And so it's not clear whether the information in here would be reliable.
APTN plugged the introduction of Bear's Plains Cree Adjectives book into 3 AI detectors. While their accuracy can't be guaranteed, all 3 suggested the text was 100% AI generated. Gerhard notes a few other telltale signs.
You can do a search for these authors and find that they're not real people. But the big tell is that the ISBN, the International Book Number, is just made up.
Whether or not the language books are AI generated, someone somewhere uploaded them to the Amazon Marketplace. And Lewis worries they could be dangerous.
There's a lot of people that are really want to learn their languages, the Indigenous languages, And then it's just a shame that somebody sort of capitalized on it in that way.
Gerhard says sellers face few, if any, consequences for uploading books like this.
I don't think there's any way that we can police this. I don't think there's any consequences we can bring on the people doing this. Instead, what we can do is educate the public and let them know that these things are out there and to be careful of the sources of the information that you get.
Not judging a book by its cover, Lewis believes these dubious texts underscore the need for more Indigenous language programs.
We need them all over the place because there's so many people that are living in the cities, in the towns, not only the First Nations or the settlements, Métis communities. We're everywhere now, right? And then if we can sort of get online and then start teaching these languages, then I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Tim Gilman, an Amazon spokesperson, said there are content guidelines for books sold on Amazon and that Amazon will remove non-compliant books and suspend publisher accounts for repeated abuse. Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing guidelines require authors to disclose AI-generated, but not AI-assisted content. After APTN reached out to Amazon, Bear's Plains Cree book series was removed. However, dozens of similar books are still for sale. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, Sierra. What a bizarre story, but I guess one that should come as no surprise. Time for one last break. Still to come, look at tonight's episode of Face to Face with our guest, business leader, Carol Ann Hilton.
I think we're seeing at the top levels, if you look at the big 6 banks, including Bank of Canada, we're seeing Indigenous peoples as corporate directors on these banks, and that is a massive shift.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Gloria from the Beardies in Okimassis First Nation sent in this beauty of a sunrise. Gloria's home nation is located in the heart of Saskatchewan, And we want to thank her for sharing this photo. Remember, for the chance to be our next photo of the day, you can send your photos to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, showers and 19 for Halifax and Fredericton. +1 with snow in Kuujjuaq, 3 above in Nain. Showers and 20 in Montreal, rain and 5 for Val-d'Or. 11 with showers in Sault Ste. Marie, rain and 14 in North Bay. 10 in Thunder Bay, cloudy and 6 in Sioux Lookout. +1 in God's Lake, Norway House and the Paw. 3 in Winnipeg, snow and +2 for Dauphin. -2 with rain in Regina, +1 in Saskatoon. 2 above in Meadow Lake, 3 and cloudy in Buffalo Narrows. Snow across northern Alberta, 5 in High Level, 1 in Fort Chipewyan. 8 in Edmonton, 6 in Lethbridge. 10 for Vancouver and Victoria, 6 with showers in Kamloops. Rain and 7 in Prince George, 12 with showers in Smithers. -10 with snow in Old Crow, flurries and 3 below in Whitehorse. -1 with flurries in Yellowknife, 10 below in Norman Wells. -14 in Sax Harbor, snow and -11 in Paulatuck. -2 in Chesterfield, 12 below in Whale Cove. -16 with snow in Resolute, 12 below and snow in Joe Haven. The founder and CEO of the Indigenomics Institute, which is committed to the growth and development of Indigenous economies, is our guest on Face to Face tonight. Carol Ann Hilton says banks are changing their mindsets when it comes to backing Indigenous business ideas.
I think we're seeing at the top levels, if you look at the big 6 banks, including Bank of Canada, we're seeing Indigenous peoples as corporate directors on these banks, and that is a massive shift, where even we look at some of those include residential school survivors who within a generation are accessing and creating spaces and sitting at tables that were never meant for us as Indigenous people. I think that we're also hearing the financial sector realizing that this wave, what we talk about through Indigenomics, is what happens beyond a $100 billion Indigenous economy, that in our process of achieving that right now, the financial sector is needing to respond in a way that advances economic reconciliation.
Well, as people continue to honor the life of Judge, Senator, and Commissioner Murray Sinclair, the family has announced the plans to celebrate his life and his journey home. There will be a public memorial service this Sunday, November 10th, at the Canada Life Centre in downtown Winnipeg. Public will be able to enter at 1 p.m. with the ceremony beginning at 2 p.m. There will also be a public visitation tomorrow, November 6th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Kubota Centre on Wilkes Avenue in Winnipeg. The family says all are welcomed and encouraged to attend. Going to be a packed house, and just seeing now that there will also be a book of condolences that will be set up at the legislature starting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And that's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For much more, including plenty of reaction on the passing of Murray Sinclair and those details on memorial service, you can head on over to our website, aptnnews.ca. And be sure to join Creason here at 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow for your first look at the day's news. Maybe we'll know who the next president is by then. Probably not. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuich, thanks for being with us. Stick around for Face to Face. Have a great night.